They were really sort of first set up from the 60s, 70s onwards as safe places for brown people to drink.
Award-winning journalist and beer writer David Jesudason's latest book, Desi Pubs, A Guide to British Indian Pubs, Food and Culture, is an absolute revelation, and I'm super excited to share my recent interview with him.
I think they're the best of Britain, and they were the vanguard of multiculturalism.
To celebrate the book's recent launch, Desi Pale Ale was brewed by Meantime, so I seized the opportunity I was given to get to know the brewer behind this delicious collaboration better, Nidhi Sharma.
My journey in brewing started in India. So I kind of wanted to make a beer related to what I had brewed in India. I want to see people like myself or like more women in the industry.
Hello, so I am joined here with Nidhi Sharma at Meantime, and really I just want to kind of get into things really quickly and just ask you before we jump into the talking about Desi Pale Ale, just about your beer story and how you got to this point.
Hello. I was finishing my engineering in 2016 and I had a really boring engineering job that I did for 3 months. And the person who I was seeing at that time, who's now my husband, had moved from the UK to India to start India's first craft brewery. And so I just started going in, hanging out, helping them with bits and bobs. Their assistant brewer was about to leave, so I started taking it more seriously and thinking of it maybe as a career. So for the first year, I was basically just an intern. And then after I had the first year under my belt, because I was already doing like 3 brews by myself and packaging at the same time. So I felt like it came naturally to me. And then I started, studying for my IBD exams and got more and more into it. And yeah, then took it from there. But I mean, what made me leave that brewery in India in the first place was just the inherent misogyny associated with women in production. I mean, there were times, and so yeah, I mean, that's why I had to just leave that place because it was not the fault of the person who started the brewery, but the bureaucracy level is just so insane in India that it's not very easy to bypass it, especially when you're trying to make a good product with, I mean, brewing as a woman is a novelty anywhere, but when you take it to India, you get the real misogyny out. So yeah, it just made more sense then because I'd already started preparing for my exams to then move to Copenhagen because James, my husband, got a job offer from White Labs. They make yeast for pretty much, they're like one of the 2 big yeast guys where brewing is involved. And then I got asked to work there as well because they knew my background and they knew my work ethic through James. So yeah, and then I made yeast for a couple of years. And while I was making yeast, I remembered how much I missed brewing. And then on one of the trips from Copenhagen to London, I was hanging out with the Colonel lot, as in the Colonel Brewery. And yeah, and they said, oh, a couple of people who work with us are leaving. So we're really looking for someone, but you might have to do 2 people's job. I mean, everyone chips in at the Colonel, so it's never like, oh, you're going to do 2 people's jobs. And I mean, how can you say no to the Colonel, right? And so yeah, I quit my Copenhagen job, moved to the UK. When I moved to the Colonel, I just finished my GCB and my first diploma and was preparing for my second diploma. And then COVID hit, and I mean, in a weird, perverse way, because I was working throughout, I enjoyed that sort of reduced London noise and just, yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's how I've been brewing. And then I moved from the Colonel to Meantime after I finished my third diploma because I realized that I loved the Colonel, but I felt like as like a personal thing that my growth was getting stunted when beer is involved because I want to get real deep in the science of it. And so I knew that I wanted to give more exams and continue learning more instead of just perfecting what's already been created. And so, yeah, then that's when I started looking to move out and go to a place which might help me look at beer and brewing in a completely different way in comparison to how I used to look at it at the Kernel. And yeah, that's when I started working at Meantime.
Amazing. I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That I really appreciate that.
Thank
So
you.
I guess we're here today to talk about Desi Pale Ale. So do you want to do a brief intro into the Pale Ale and talk to us about the flavour profile and just the journey that you've been on with this beer?
How this beer happened is very interesting because Zoe, our ops manager, I was in the cellar cleaning a tank, and she said, do you have any thoughts on what we should do this Women's Day? And I said, maybe we could make a lager. And she was like, oh yeah, let's do that. Let's make that happen. And incidentally, 8th of March was also the day this year that one of the Hindu festivals was on. It's called Holi, and it was 4th year in a row that I wasn't going to be able to celebrate it. So I was kind of down in the dumps about it. So I texted David and I said, hey, I'm making this beer on Holi. Do you want to come and like be a part of the brew day? And he said, I would have really loved to, but I'm in the middle of finishing my book. And I said, oh, I'm gutted to hear that. And he said, why don't we collaborate and make a beer for the book launch? And I said, that sounds incredible. And yeah, I just got to working and thinking of ideas, but I was also aware that I only had 3 weeks and one shot at making this beer. So that was a bit challenging. But yeah, we're here in the end. In terms of what David thought about what the beer should be like, he just was like, you have the full creative authority on this. See what you feel like. And then I thought that, well, my journey in brewing started in India. So I kind of wanted to make a beer related to what I had brewed in India. And in India, the IPA that I made was an IPA that's just etched in my memory as a very, very distinct. And it's like in a small flavor packet, just lodged in the back of my head somewhere. And it slowly releases every time I make a recipe. And this time I was like, full power. I'm going to stab this packet and get everything out. Yeah, so I combined that with the wheat beer that we used to make in India as well. And the one ingredient that I've never seen in beer or never seen done well in beer is turmeric. And although like when people say spice, they generally think floral or hot, or it has to be like intense. Turmeric is a very, very intense spice, but it's also it has so many different flavors. It can be mango, it can be guava, it can be earth, it can be ginger. It's how you play with it. And so I knew that no, I can not use anything, but I will use turmeric. And then the other thing I thought about was considering, like New England IPAs and hazy IPA styles. I was like, I know I can make a hazy beer without chucking a shit ton of hops in there or using the new varietals. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the new varietals. It's fun to play with them. But I kind of wanted to, pay my homage to the noble hops, Saaz and Willhemet. And I was like, I'm going to try and make an IPA with Saaz. It sounds mental, but I'm going to do it. And so, yeah, I used Saaz, which is meant to be like really peppery, and it's generally used in making pilsners. So it was a bit stupid of me to think that I could make a great IPA with Saaz. But I'm really glad at the way it's turned out. And speaking about turmeric, I do want to mention that once I made the beer and I was dumping the yeast after the fermentation was finished, the yeast was yellow. And I was like, yes, I've stained the brewery floor in turmeric. I've achieved what I've set out for. It's a very, very straightforward beer. I think it was more about playing with the spice in the brewing process itself, because I've not really dry hopped it much or added spices in the fermentation. So yeah, the beer essentially, when you smell it, the two distinct, and it may be a very, very personal memory for me. The two distinct things that come from the smell itself is turmeric, but like when you use turmeric when you put turmeric in flour and make a dough to make like chapatis, that, and the other thing is wood apple. Like you don't get it in England. It's a very, very Indian fruit. It looks like a melon, uh, and it smells mental. It smells like it could be melon, it could be sugarcane, it could be mango. It's a very, very intense fruit. Uh, and when I smelled that in the beer, I was just, I got goosebumps. I was like, I can't believe I've managed to capture wood apple in this pint. Uh, yeah, and that's the beer. I wouldn't say that it's a spicy beer in terms of like, it's not like a wit beer. It's not. It is still a pale ale at the end of the day. But I would say it's really, really well balanced with spices that you don't usually associate with pale ales.
Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm definitely going to try and pop down for a visit. So
I can't wait for you to be down here.
I guess one of the things that David has explored and some of the pubs that he's visited is actually the combinations of the food and the beer.
Yeah.
Actually, if I was going to sit down right now and have that beer with any different types of foods, which would you recommend? I'm interested to try all of these.
I mean, yeah, obviously the beer was made with the intention of being paired with the Indian food because David mentioned a very interesting point about how with the advent of Cobra and Kingfisher and how much they've just basically infiltrated the market and the idea that Indian food should always be paired with lager. And that's another reason why I wanted to make a pale ale, because this really, really goes well. I mean, yesterday I was having it with bhajis and samosas and it was brilliant because even though it's a very, very intense flavor, the way it washes down, because it's a fairly dry beer, you have one swig and you have a bite to eat and you want that again. And I guess that's what good food pairing is, right? That you want both those things, one after the other or simultaneously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if I were to pick one thing right now, I mean, I've been sweaty today because I've been working, so I'm really jonesing like a full hearty meal. I would probably go for lal mas if you're if you're a non-vegetarian, which is boneless lamb cooked in it's a special type of red chili, and you just cook it and you cook it and you cook it, and it's like it's not hot food. It's just very, very unctuous, hearty Indian curry that not many people have heard of. I would definitely eat that with some turmeric chapatis.
Nice. And then I am going to push you for the veggie option because I know there's a lot.
I will because
veggie.
The thing is, yeah, definitely. I think I'm more vegetarian than I'm non-vegetarian, but like I said, I've been sweating and I just really want to be like ravenous. For the veggie option, okay.
Oh, well.
So again, talking about turmeric and chapatis, you can make these stuffed chapatis with potatoes, and it's vegan as well because you cook it in oil and it's potatoes and flour essentially. You roll out these flatbreads, stuff them with potato, and you can do anything with the potatoes you want, like any spices you want, no spice, salt and pepper, that's fine as well. And you stuff it, roll it out again, and then you shallow fry it, and you have it with like raita or mango chutney. Oh, that aloo paranta right now with that beer would be brilliant.
And then in terms of the actual brewing process, how hands-on was it and how did it work with David? I'm just interested to find out more.
So like I said, it was quite a tight schedule because it happened so quick. 8th of March, he comes up with this idea. I go up to Zoe, my ops manager, say, hey, there's another brew lined up after this International Women's Day. Are you up for it? And she was like, yes. So she reached out to Asahi XCOM and they were super excited about it immediately. So we did it on the pilot kit, which is 1,000 liters. So it's just a 10 hect kit. But it was very hands-on because it's a very, very manual kit. So yeah, I had to dig in, get the grain out, everything. It was quite manual. And I was super aware of the fact that I was using whole turmeric tubes. So I knew that if this splits out of the bag in the boil, it's going to get stuck and I'll have to take out the entire bottom of the kettle. And I was really not looking forward to that. And incidentally, obviously, one little turmeric fell out and got just wedged in between the valves. So I had to there was a lot of poking towards the end of the day involved to get that last bit of turmeric out.
It sounds like a hoot, though.
It was great because throughout the day, the smells were a surprise at every phase of the brewing process. Like when the mash went in, because the mash has like 0.5% of rye malt in it as well, along with just your
Yeah.
normal ale. The way the mash looked, the way the mash smelled, and then how quickly it changed once I started lautering. And then, yeah, just seeing that color evolve with temperature as well. And then the turmeric was only added towards like the end of the boil. And then the way the color changed in those last 10 minutes was insane. It was so dramatic. I wish I'd recorded it.
Oh, I wish you had as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
do it.
there's more where this came from.
We need a little time lapse thing going all the time, or like a
Yeah, I
live.
mean, the thing is, I was just hyper aware of the fact that if this goes tits up, I don't know how to
Yeah.
save it. So it had to
Yeah.
be right. So I was just so focused that day that I couldn't think of anything else.
I love the risk that you've taken making this beer. It's super exciting. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, I have made, I've been brewing for 6 years. I have brewed a few thousand hectoliters, but I think this is the first time I've made a beer like I would make food at home. So it's entirely something that happened here, and it's translated so well that I have surprised myself.
oh, that's so good. I honestly am super excited to try it. And if anybody else is watching, listening, and you are not as excited as I am, why not? You were selling it to me. I just love the risk
Yeah.
involved, and I love the experimentation, and I love,
Yeah,
you know,
it is
how,
quite experimental.
how you've really been out there with all of the different flavors, and it
Yeah.
sounds like nothing else that I have ever tried. So I'm super.
Definitely. I think it's a very, am I hyping myself up here? Yes. But
You can. This is the place. This is the place.
yeah, but I don't think it is a very, very distinct aroma. And I think like the taste is amazing because it's weird. It's like, I'm eating a ginger nut. Oh, wait, no, I'm eating like an orange Jaffa cake. No, wait, I'm actually eating, it's so many things. But it's this smell that I can't get over.
What are your hopes, I guess, using this as a platform for the future?
I think, one of the main things obviously is to give brewers more authorities to experiment. But when I say brewers, I want to see people like myself or like more women in the industry just not being bogged down by male ideals that have been set for brewers. That, oh, you're a brewer. So immediately people form an image of what a brewer is. And I think through this beer and how experimental it is and where it comes from, and also the fact that it's meantime. The meantime's been going on for a long time, and yet it's constantly reinventing itself. So I think like changing your mindset about what a brewery is, what a brewer is really important. And I think through this beer especially, meantime has shown that, it's important to just engage with your community, talk to more people, and because beer at the end of the day has always been, will always be a cultural thing more than anything else, and it should constantly be utilized as that tool.
I'm so glad that we got to spend this time together, and
I'm
yeah,
so glad this has happened. Yes, big up, Shoma.
I'm salivating at the thought of trying this beer.